In business today, three things to know. First, the Supreme Court buries Aereo. The upstart TV service is declared illegal and dealt what is likely a fatal blow. Did consumers win or lose? Then, GDP roller coaster. The U.S. economy turns in a disastrous first quarter, but why Fed Chair Janet Yellen and you might not care. And did YouTube just kill the indie radio star? How Google's video service is at war with tomorrow's pop stars. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Aereo, it was nice knowing you. The U.S. Supreme Court effectively outlawed the startup TV service that redirects over-the-air broadcast networks to your computer and mobile devices. Available in several major cities, the service allowed people to watch TV online using a remote antenna. The 6-3 majority held that Aereo, which is backed by media mogul Barry Diller, violates the copyright of networks and programmers. Aereo's CEO issued the following statement, quote, using an antenna to access free-to-air broadcast stations is still meaningful for more than 60 million Americans across the U.S. And when new technology enables consumers to use a smarter, easier-to-use antenna, consumers and the marketplace win. The clear loser, however, is Aereo, which many now consider history. Legal analyst Horace Cooper is in Washington, D.C. to explain the decision and whether it was a good one. Horace, we've had you on the program before talking about Aereo. You thought this ruling would go a different way, and so did many.
Yeah, absolutely. And the breakout on the vote was pretty interesting as well, with Scalia, Thomas, and Alito, the more conservative members of the court, recognizing that the arguments being put forward by the broadcasters simply, A, weren't consistent with the law, or B, consistent with the 21st century expectations that consumers have. This is going to have some stifling effect on innovation, and I actually think it's going to be harmful not just to consumers, but it's actually going to be harmful to the interests of broadcasters.
Well, yeah, let's look back at history here and, of course, the famous Betamax case. That is the case where the Supreme Court said, for those of us who remember Betamax tapes, just a little bit before my time, the Supreme Court said that you can, in the privacy of your own home, record and keep copies of television programs. The broadcasters fought that very hard, but, of course, that helped save the industry. And this case seemed like it was very similar on legal terms.
Absolutely. If the broadcasters had had their way then, many people who wanted to watch some of the popular shows that were on but simply couldn't because of their schedule participate in it. Many of those shows might have lost support and would have gotten canceled. They created a whole new generation of viewers who were able to schedule it around their time. Now we take for granted that you can stream videos, movies, and the like. This is similar. There has been a 5+ year long dramatic drop in the people who are cutting the cord. Mm-hmm. They're eliminating cable, they're eliminating satellite. And they're saying if they can't find it free or get it on the internet, they're not watching it at all. That means advertisers' revenue is also dropping. That means interest in broadcasting is dropping.
Horace, Aereo retransmitted what's called free over-the-air stations that you can receive by putting an antenna out there. To call these networks free television, isn't it intellectually dishonest, especially after today's ruling? Broadcasters trade their properties all the time like private properties.
Yeah, the court even, I think, disappointed me with the idea that this was they called it a special performance each time you view it, because they said it wasn't a continuous stream. Well, that's ignorance on a large level.
And Scalia went after that. Scalia went after that rationale today. Says there's no performance by Aereo.
Yeah, there is any performance by Aereo, and this isn't a special viewing activity. This isn't you only are getting to see it. If you turned your computer on and you left it on, it would broadcast the same way as if you'd hooked up an antenna over the airwaves. What is a setback here now is what we should be seeing as the inevitable, that we're going to get untethered access to data, to information, to TV, to this network. All that is being stymied by those who would have us believe that the only way you could do this is the way we started this out in the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah, and it seems like the court maybe is just really behind the times of the technology. Do you think this is a case where the court did not understand the technology? John Roberts is a pretty young guy, though, so it doesn't seem like that was the case.
Justice Breyer wrote this opinion, and I laughed when he made the kinds of comments that seem to not really comprehend. This is not like going to a restaurant and putting money in a jukebox.
That's right.
This is just regular TV viewing, the kind you could go to Walmart, Target, pick up an antenna, put it in behind your television and watch. There is no different. Now, the only space left that I see is that perhaps somebody is going to develop a box that you have a micro antenna inside of it, and it allows you to pick up the same signal that the ugly antenna can get.
Horace, we got to go, but ultimately technology finds a way, doesn't it? Horace Cooper in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. It turns out that the first quarter growth for the U.S. economy was an outright mess. Revised gross domestic product numbers show that the economy contracted down 2.9%. That is a revision further downward from a negative 1%. Healthcare spending led the way down. In a moment, we'll ask if we should even care about the GDP number that is now 3 months old. Other economic news on Wednesday, durable good orders fell 1% in May, largely due to a drop in military spending. Durable goods are considered long-lasting products. And a reason to brush off the GDP number and even the durable good number, however, is that America's service sector is humming along. According to the survey company Market, business activity in the service sector surged in June. The markets did move moderately higher today. Here are the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing up 49.38 to 16,867. The S&P 500 up 9.5, and the S&P 500 up 9.5, and the Nasdaq up 29.40 to 43.79. And taking a look at commodities, gold down $1.20, and oil back up over $106 a barrel. So does the first quarter GDP number mean anything for the rest of the year? Brian Jacobsen is the portfolio strategist with Wells Fargo Funds Management and joins us from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Brian, welcome back to Arise Exchange. You look at this GDP number and you say, ouch. First, why did the government get the number so horribly wrong now twice? And second, should we be concerned?
Well, you know, let's face it, the government, they're just doing some good guesswork here when it comes to collecting some of this data. And they do, I think, a very good job of usually getting these things at least close to on target. But this was a huge miss. Part of the reason for it was, as you alluded to at the beginning, there was the healthcare spending aspect. When they originally estimated as far as growth in personal consumption expenditures, and healthcare services are part of that, they were using estimates that came from Medicaid and enrollments in the Affordable Care Act exchanges. Well, you can't really just base healthcare spending on those numbers alone. As they got more information that came from hospitals and service providers, they realized that they grossly overestimated the amount that people spent on that. So that's why we saw these major revisions down. So if you block out sort of that big oops on the part of the Bureau of Economic Analysis, they actually didn't do too bad of a job.
And of course, the first quarter was harassed a little bit by the weather, which we kept bringing up. So now that's in the past. We are looking forward. And what does that number mean going forward, if anything? Because maybe some say the first quarter was such an aberration.
Yeah, the first quarter, I think, was an aberration because we know that it did have a dramatic effect on business spending and on exports. It was difficult to get goods to ports and actually deliver goods. So it really wasn't that big of a surprise that there was a contraction of the economy. Now, the question is what sort of bounce back are we going to get here? Is it going to be like a rubber ball that's been slammed down and it bounces back to its old levels or even surpasses it? Or is it going to be more like it's going to be the slow rise if you bounce a Nerf ball that's been soaking in water all day? And I think that that's probably the picture that we're going to have, is where it's not going to rebound to the previous levels. It's going to be pretty muddled, slow growth from here.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, do we now fall so far behind in the first quarter that we have to revise down the numbers for the rest of the year?
I think that we do, and that's one of the things that I have noticed that not a lot of people have done yet. They're still projecting, let's say, 3% growth for the entire year.
Yeah, how do you get there now?
This is a big hole. Yeah, exactly. In order to even get back to the historical average of around 2.4% over the last 5 years, we'd have to have 4% growth for the second, third, and fourth quarter. And I really don't think that that's going to be feasible.
And with the drop in durable goods, let's say in May, and you factor everything in, are we looking now at a second quarter that might be a little softer than anticipated?
It's entirely possible because the durable goods orders are really a good leading indicator about where is GDP going to be, because what's counted in GDP is what's actually produced, so the orders precede what's actually produced. So this weak reading, I think that was actually somewhat unique to the defense spending and airline spending. Airline spending is usually driven by Boeing, and that's always the swing factor. If we look at core capital goods, so excluding defense and excluding airlines, that's actually not looking too bad. It was down last month, and then it was actually up a little bit. So I think that we're going to have subdued growth, but it's actually going to be sustainable growth. I'm not that concerned that we're going to be dipping back into a recession anytime soon.
And then, therefore, when you look at the stock market as a whole, there are pockets of growth that you're pretty happy with, and the Fed may look at the whole holistic number here and just keep its policy what it's doing right now.
Correct. And actually, I think that the weak numbers that we saw are actually going to give them a little bit more ammunition to postpone when it is that eventually they'll have to raise rates. Big reason for that is they're really concerned about tomorrow. They're going to be releasing the personal consumption expenditure numbers, which is one of their favorite price indices to follow. And that was pretty weak for the first 3 months. It was only at about an annualized pace of about 1%. They're shooting for a 2% target there. So I think that if anything, this weak data gives them more ammunition to actually wait to raise rates until we get to maybe middle of 2015, if not a little bit later.
Okay, Brian Jacobsen, we'll look at that number tomorrow from Wells Fargo Management in Milwaukee. Thank you. Coming up, the tools of the trade will introduce you to the stock whisperer. You're watching Horace Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms, just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not gonna do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Welcome back to Horace Exchange. It is a bank you may never have heard of, but it's been around for 80 years. The U.S.-run Export-Import Bank was created to guarantee financing of foreign purchases of American products, especially in fields such as the aerospace and defense industry. It is an independent agency of the U.S. government and makes the U.S. Treasury about $1.5 billion a year. But there is now alarm among large exporters that the new House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, may move to end the bank's charter. And he has the support among many Tea Party Republicans. Genevieve Wood is from the Heritage Foundation, joins us now from Washington, D.C. The Heritage Foundation opposes the renewal of the bank's charter. Genevieve, welcome to Horace Exchange. You know, I was at a defense contractor dinner on Long Island last night, and this was topic number A. Their trade group says that ending this bank's charter will cost 200,000 jobs in the U.S. and will significantly weaken our defense. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think they're absolutely wrong on that. Look, the export business in this country is a $2 trillion industry annually in this country. 98% of the export business that takes place does so without any help whatsoever from the Export-Import Bank. 98%. So we're talking about 2% of folks who say the only way to ever get their exporting done is to have this bank subsidize loans to foreign companies.
Well, they don't. Do they subsidize the loans, though? They backstop the loans. That's different than subsidizing.
Well, they provide loans, they provide guarantees, and what's clear here, and one of the main reasons that we're opposed to reauthorizing it, is because if any of these companies were to default on their loans or they would to go bad, it's not the Export-Import Bank that's on the hook, it's the American taxpayer.
Okay, but that's true. But the bank says, and the supporters say, the default rate is actually very low, and that last year it made $1.5 billion for the Treasury. Yeah. Now, maybe we don't want the government in the business of business, but we could use the money, can't we?
Well, considering we're running about a $17 to $18 trillion debt, yeah, we can use the money that we can get from almost anywhere. But the way that the Export-Import Bank does their accounting is a little different than the way every other private lender and bank has to do their accounting. So they say that they're making a profit, but the Congressional Budget Office just came out last month saying actually it's projected they would actually cost American taxpayers $2 billion over the next 10 years as opposed to making a profit. So they've got their numbers, but CBO and others have their numbers, which show the bank may not be making a profit whatsoever. They're actually costing us money. And look, let's be clear, too. I mean, if there's no risk of default, if this isn't a problem, then why can't they get private banks to actually back up these loans if it's not a big deal?
And your argument
That's a good question.
And your argument is that this is a form of corporate welfare. But what do you say to these defense contractors? And by the way, defense contractors are not all Grumman. There are many small businesses. I met a lot of them on Long Island yesterday that say that they can't do business without this bank.
Well, I don't know why they can't do business without this bank. Why can't they get others to provide those loans? As I said, 98% of exports take place in this country without any help from the Ex-Im Bank. So what's special about this particular 2%? And secondly, they talk about creating jobs, but you can talk to others, whether it's Delta Airlines, whether it's a iron mine up in Michigan and Minnesota, where you've got folks saying, actually, you're costing U.S. jobs because you're giving business in other countries an unfair advantage by giving them the ability to borrow at a lower rate than an American company could. So Air India can borrow money at a lesser rate than Delta Airlines can and buy Boeing jets and get a better deal than Delta can. But then Delta's got to compete with Air India. I mean, the Airline Association claims they've lost at least 7,500 jobs.
Okay.
That's right. They came out and said that's a problem for them.
All right. Genevieve Wood from the Heritage Foundation. No matter which way you come down on this issue, it is something most Americans may not know about, and it's a good education for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation. U.S. oil exports are coming back. The U.S. government has cleared the way for the first exports of oil in nearly 4 decades by allowing 2 companies to sell ultra-light oil to foreign buyers. Pioneer Natural Resources and Enterprise Products Partners, both from Texas, have been told they can export the lightly processed oil known as condensate, which can be turned into gasoline, jet fuel, and diesel. Barnes & Noble is about to start a new chapter. The bookstore chain announcing it will split into 2 separately traded public companies, one for Barnes & Noble retail operations and another for its Nook business. The bookseller plans to finalize the split by the end of the first quarter of 2015. A Chinese tycoon served up a fancy lunch to hundreds of homeless New Yorkers today. Eccentric recycling magnate Qian Guangbiao, who is known for his outrageous stunts that publicize his charitable and environmental causes, invited up to 1,000 underprivileged Americans to a gourmet lunch at the Boathouse restaurant in New York Central Park. It's a terrific little restaurant. Chen also promised to donate $300 per attendee to charity. He says he wants to disprove the cliche image of rich Chinese spending money mostly on luxuries. It's an online educational trading room called The Stock Whisperer. For a nominal fee, you can sign up and be part of a community of traders learning how to pick the hot stocks of the day. The site is run by Stephanie Kammerman, founder and managing director of The Stock Whisperer. She's been a trader now for 20 years and is here on Horace Xchange to give her some of her, dare we say, insider trading tips. Welcome to Horace Xchange. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So what is The Stock Whisperer? We're talking about traders here. This is not investors. This is basically people who are active traders. Walk us first through how you got into the business and why you decided to educate people.
Well, like many traders out there that are watching this program, I knew absolutely nothing about the stock market. And 20 years ago, I started out as an assistant to one of the best traders at Schoenfeld Securities, which is the largest proprietary firm on Long Island. I sat in the $1 million room. People would pay money to sit where I sat, and there I was, getting paid to learn from the best traders.
Okay, so what are some, not stock tips, but what are some of the tips for people who maybe want to get into the trading business themselves that you give people? How do they start out?
Well, the first thing you need to do is to get an education. Education is very important. Trading without an education is gambling.
Education meaning know the business, know how the markets work.
Know how the market works, yes. Know how trading is, and learn the tricks and the trades of trading. It's a technical world out there. We're not trading against people. We're trading against computers.
Yeah, and I want to ask you that, do you basically teach technical analysis? Is trading more on technical analysis and less on fundamentals?
Completely on technical analysis. However, I do focus on fundamental analysis when it comes to longer term swing trading, but for the day-to-day on the day trader, it's all about reading the tape.
And why does reading the tape work? Is it because we believe in this collective consciousness that people simply believe it and therefore what works, works? I mean, if you believe in head and shoulders, if you believe in Fibonacci trades, that it works.
Well, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
But if you see that a big hedge fund just bought 10 million shares of a company, and the stock starts to move up, well, that's
Do you get hurt?
following.
By the way, I want to ask you about flash trading for a moment here. Are your clients or people you're teaching, are they getting hurt by flash traders, by people who get the information in a millisecond? And when I say people, it's computers.
The high-frequency traders.
frequency.
Yeah, no, actually, we love the high-frequency traders because they make the market liquid. It's the dark pool prints that are quite disturbing. They're the late prints that don't come across until a couple hours later, even the next day.
Why are there so few women in this business?
Well,
I mean, we've seen the movies and we know what the atmosphere is like, so maybe that's part of it.
Well, there used to be so few women, but not anymore. In fact, I have the most unbelievable traders in my trading room right now. They're all women.
That's
They're
really
fabulous.
So
yeah.
how do you approach women and say you can do this?
Well, they approach me. I do a lot of presentations all over the country, and they come up to me. And I guess they feel if she can do it, so can I.
So over the past 20 years, what are the key elements that have changed this business for you?
It's gotten easier, actually, than when I first started.
Easier to make money or easier to...
Easier to trade because it's...
Technology?
Yeah, technology, the software.
Information.
Scanners. We can do this from home. Years ago, we couldn't do this from home.
And has that resulted in also taking sort of the middlemen out of the equation, where people used to couldn't be traders before, right? They'd have to pick up the phone and call a broker.
Yes. I mean, there's still brokers. We still have to pay a commission, but it's gotten very competitive. We don't have to pay $25 a trade.
Where online can people find you?
www.thestockwhisper.com.
Stephanie Kammerman, thank you so much. Appreciate you stopping by.
Me. Thank you.
Coming up, a woman who used her student loan money for her body, not so much her mind. Our favorite person of the day is coming up on Horace Exchange.
Arise News is a different kind of network. We are able to tell our own stories, and we're able to cover stories in a way that other media outlets don't do. We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. Arise News is a place where we can tell stories in an interesting, factual, inclusive way like no one else in the business can.
One of the great things about Arise Entertainment 360 is we have this Arise to Your Health segment, which really focuses on the holistic approach of being healthy. So we do everything from working out to juicing to getting in shape by doing fun exercises like bouncing on a trampoline or wearing these bouncy boots on our feet when we're jumping all over the set. We've done karate, we've danced the weight off, we've done just about everything. And of course, I love when we eat on set, but we do it in a very healthy and clean way.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, it is a woman who used her student loan money to redo her body instead of going to classes. Katerina Christodoulou received $17,000 from the British government to attend Essex University. But instead, she used the student loan money on plastic surgery. She had liposuction and work on her butt, thighs, and hips all done. And as if that wasn't enough, her now ex-boyfriend paid for her boob job. I'm sure he's glad he made that investment. But lest you think that Katerina skipped classes altogether, her family actually paid her tuition, even though she got money to pay for that on herself. Katerina says, why not use the money for whatever makes her happy? Apparently, better breasts but not a good education is one of those things. In England, students have 25 years to pay back the loan, and if they don't, well, then the loan is forgiven. No word on what the British government thinks of how its money was used in this case, and so Katerina Christodoulou is our favorite person of the day. You're watching Horace Exchange. We'll be back in a minute.
If I was building my own news network, I think I'd want broad, in-depth knowledge of important issues throughout the world.
I would want to recruit a fairly diverse staff that had different life experiences before they came to news.
We want to see how we can help ourselves and help benefit other people, not just see what's up with the celebrities and where they're going and traveling and buying this and buying that.
If I were to build my own news network, it would certainly have to reflect a diversity of culture, because that's the global situation, that's the global reality.
I would probably bring a lot of personal stories, really personal stories from the leaders of all countries.
If I was to build my own news network, I would just have people from all over who are very connected and diverse.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
That they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
The FAA is rolling out long-awaited air traffic technology. It promises to make air travel in and out of the nation's busiest airports safer and more on time. The Air Traffic Control Center in the Houston metropolitan area will be the first of 14 locations nationwide to implement an airspace overhaul known as Xchange. It's part of the Federal Aviation Administration's plan to transition air traffic control from radar to satellite. Anthony Fox is the Secretary of Transportation.
We are always looking for ways to improve safety in our airspace. And we think next generation technology, NextGen, is going to do that. It's going to do that because we can track the planes more precisely. It's going to do it because planes will ultimately have more awareness of other planes in the airspace.
Using satellites will let planes fly more direct routes. The technology is expected to cut airlines' costly fuel consumption by as much as 3 million gallons a year. Passengers may notice the difference by listening to the sound of the engines when a plane comes in for landing. Currently on approach, planes level off at certain points. NextGen in the Houston area will now enable pilots to almost idle the engines while plane descends at a steady rate. The FAA compares it to sliding down a banister. Major airlines support the airspace redesign and have spent hundreds of millions of dollars incorporating the new technology into their planes. But earlier this month, Dave Barger, the CEO of JetBlue, expressed concern that the FAA's NextGen overhaul wasn't moving fast enough.
I think there has been progress. We can talk about progress, but we need progress quicker, faster. It's just the technology is there. We need to move it forward.
Total price tag on next generation air traffic control services is said to be $40 billion. We had begun the show talking to you about the YouTube battle with up-and-coming pop stars. YouTube, of course, is owned by Google, and we had hoped to have a guest on that, but because of some technical issues out of San Francisco, we're unable to bring that to you, so we'll effort that for another day. Tomorrow on Arise Xchange, we're going to take a look at a controversial plan to tax yoga. That's stressing out a lot of people who perform yoga. It is happening in Washington, D.C. So we'll take a look at yoga and gym memberships taxes. Let's take a look at the markets once again. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing up 49.38 to 16,867. The S&P 500 up 9.55 to 19.59, and the Nasdaq up 29.40. Basically, the markets not too concerned about a disastrous gross domestic product number for the first quarter. That was several months ago, and the general thinking is that things are getting better. But we will find out at the end of this quarter, which is in just a couple of weeks, how the second quarter GDP number did, and that will really be key about how the Federal Reserve sort of looks at the economy going forward and whether it might start inching up interest rates. Right now, the betting in the equity markets and the bond markets, of course, is that is not going to happen. Thanks for watching Arise Xchange on this Wednesday. I'm Andrew Schmertz. We will see you again here on Thursday. Have a very good evening, everybody.